In the month of March, the contributions and achievements of women around the world are celebrated. This happens not just on International Women's Day, but all month long. And today we have the pleasure of featuring members of the prospective women empowerment organization. I love this, C.A.W.S, C.A.W.S, which stands for Celebrating a Woman's Strength. This is an organization that aims to support women and families. And they will do this by assisting with various activities, including how to seek grants. So join us in welcoming the founder of C.A.W.S, Sybil Allen Jones, and director, Dr. Josephine Claxton-Richardson. Welcome to Good Morning S.K.N,
Welcome,
both of you. Wow, familiar faces indeed.
Good
How are you
morning. We're good. Good, thank you. And you?
Great.
Thanks.
Great to see both of you. Great to have this conversation
nice to.
started. And we're starting it this way. What inspired the name C.A.W.S?
I think I'll turn that over to Dr. Sybil, and she can explain, as the founder of the organization, so she can explain a bit further. Yeah.
So essentially, this is in honor of my grandmother. Her name was Mabel Woodcock, and she was a fiery person. I think I get all of my fieriness from her. And she was a chef and an entrepreneur before we even knew those words. My mother, Josephine Allen, who was a public health nurse in the 50s and 40s in St. Kitts, where women rocked healthcare because there were no physicians. I think Dr. Sebastian was the first Black physician in St. Kitts, but the nurses took care of things. And then my cousin Lucy, her name is Lucina Walrand. She was the one that actually made it possible for us to go to Canada. I should say she went up on what was called the Domestic Workers Program in 1967 to Canada. So she was like my second mom. And then finally, my sister, Amber Allen, Pennyfeather, who unfortunately left us way too early in 2018. And she was a teacher at Morris Hillier, an educator. And so this foundation is in honor of the strength of these women who have influenced my life in a very positive way and allow me to continue to do all the work I do. I'm an Energizer bunny, so I just keep on going. I won't stop. I won't give up on this nation. There's so much work to be done, and I'm here to do that. In the form of an NGO. And I'm very fortunate to have people like Dr. Claxton and Iseline Phillip, who just came back from Canada as a gender specialist. She was a friend of Akila's, my younger daughter. And we're just gonna provide a level of professionalism and accountability and transparency in an NGO, which is, as you mentioned, it's called C.A.W.S, because we feel that women we are the womb bearers of society. We're the ones that bring life into this world. So we need to be elevated and supported and be able to do the things that we need to do. And I like to think of it from a point of view of triage. And triage is a concept that's used in medicine. So if I came into JNF with a heart attack and Josephine came in with a broken finger, they should be treating me first because that's the most critical piece. And it's the same way with women and children. If we are able to make sure that women and children are thriving, then everyone else around us will thrive. So that's sort of the basis of my foundation.
You mentioned the women that motivated you. Is there anything else in particular that motivated you to establish this organization?
No, I've always been interested in women. My career, I am a psychotherapist. I have a PhD in organizational psychology. I also have been doing counseling for probably 30 plus years or so, maybe even a little longer now. 1983 was when I graduated. I can't keep track of my age and stage anymore. I recently turned 64, but I'm actually going to be 46 forever. So that's kind of how I see myself. No, I feel like I've always been a feminist. I think actually the term feminism came into my life when I was in high school. I had an amazing librarian who gathered women to talk about our role and our responsibilities and our magic. And so I've always been, working with and for women. It doesn't mean that men are not in the equation. In fact, men are really need to be in the equation because men are floundering. Men and boys are not doing well in our society. And if we don't have proper partners and supporters in that realm, then the society is not going to thrive. And so part of our programming actually will be focused on specific programs for men and boys, not facilitated by women, but by men. So that's really an important gap that we see that this NGO will bring. The other thing that we really want to do is to not necessarily develop a lot of programs. We want to support programs that are already operational so we can provide more funding, more maybe some more competencies, whatever the organization needs to be able to thrive. Because often people have great ideas, they're doing wonderful work, but the resources is really where things fall apart. So that's really, why we're decided to come back and do this, and have a team of people around me, wonderful people like Josephine and Iseline, and we're also going to be. Josephine will talk about this, creating a board that will be inclusive. And when we talk about inclusive, we're really pushing the envelope on that. So Josephine can talk a little bit about that at some point.
Yes, well, we can ask her now. Dr. Claxton, radiant smile as always. What can you tell us about what you said about the board?
Yeah, and so we talk about inclusion and we use this word, and I think we use it very loosely. We talk about we've got inclusive settings here, but we don't always have the real backing and the backbone of what inclusion really means. And if we're talking about the practice of policy providing equal access to opportunities, then the organization that what we're putting together is looking at having a board that mirrors what's going on in society. Who's in society? It's all right saying, oh, we're inclusive, we've got this, but we really want to have people that have a vision, that understand and are like-minded and really want to champion this cause of supporting organizations that are out there. So on the board, we're looking at having LGBT community, we're looking at having women, we're looking at having men, people with lots of different backgrounds that can come and actually contribute in a meaningful way and actually have that understanding that, this is not just about, stepping on anybody's foot, but it's about raising each other. Because I think in society, a lot of the time, we don't look back at history and Sankofa tells us to go back and reclaim. And if we go back and reclaim and look really at what women in history, what they've done and what they've contributed, because I did a lot of women's studies and looked at women and Black women in history, because I think we forget that. We see our Black history just about slavery and that's all we're promoting. But history for us is a richness, and we need to go back and reclaim that and look at that in order to bring us forward into where we want to be. And there's so many talented women out there, so many entrepreneurial women that don't even realize themselves because we keep knocking them back down. And this organization is about raising people to where they need to be and making them feel empowered and confident to go out there and showcase what they do have. There's so many women that I meet that are so talented that just don't believe in themselves. And like Dr. Sybil said, it's not just about the women, it's about men as well, men and the boys. And that's always been my passion. It's always been my passion to really raise the boys. And every time I see a young man doing something good, I give them praise for that. And not in a way that's patronizing, a way that raises them, because it's good to see men doing things. And I think a lot of the time we say, oh, they're not doing anything, but they are. They are doing things, but we just focus on the negative. And we want to focus at raising it and seeing what's there and bringing it to the forefront.
We understand that the aim of this organization is to offer assistance with grants. How will CAWS achieve this?
We have to, I think our ultimate aim is we have to do the groundwork. So we're going to have to look at, first of all, setting ourselves up as the NGO. Now, we're actually in our early stages. So once we're set up as an NGO, we then will look at what's out there. We have to look at the organizations that are out there. As Dr. Sybil said earlier, we're not about setting up anything new or different. We're actually about strengthening organizations that are already on the ground. So we'll look at what organizations are on the ground, which means that we have to do a lot of work looking at these organizations and seeing where there's a need or where there's a gap. And I think that's important. If we look at where the gaps are and then we try and support them in navigate them in the direction of what can help enable them to strengthen the organizations that are already there. So that's how we would start initially. So we're still in our stage of like looking at it, discussing, looking at which ways, but we have a fairly good idea of what we really want to do. And then we're going to look at, because there's so much grants out there and people just don't know how to apply for grants a lot of the time and what criteria that are looking for. So that's something that we'll be looking at as well. What's around, what's out there. We've met so many people that have got some wonderful skills, but are just in little corners. And we don't want those skills to get lost. And, with the new way things are going within society, we need to be self-sufficient. We need to be really looking at how we can enable ourselves as well.
Are there any other supportive measures that CA.W.S intends to implement? And if so, what are they and what can you tell us about them?
If I understand what you're saying is, we have a cross-section of people who will be benefiting from the organization, a large cross-section. What we do is we collaborate with existing organizations to find out what the needs are. I think sometimes we're not going to approach people coming with, this is what you need to do, or we know what you need. We have no idea what people need. So our approach is really to have those discussions, have that input. Input is very critical. Oftentimes we tell people what to do. We don't want to tell people what to do. A lot of these organizations are doing amazing work. We just want to enhance that and augment that. And so our approach is really just to go and find out, really kind of do some preliminary, surveys or preliminary, focus groups where we get a sense of what is required out there and what are the needs that the current organizations are having difficulties meeting. So that's the first kind of phase, because as I say, our focus is really on working with existing organizations right now, and there are many of them that support women, many of them support children, some that support men. There have been some men's groups in the past, and a lot of the churches in particular seem to have some focus on how they can assist men and boys. Of course, there are a lot of boys organizations as well, the Scouts and all of those kinds of programs. So that's where we want to start. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, but we do feel, I in particular have some specific suggestions and things around supporting men and boys with men leading. I have a colleague who's a Dominican who lives in London, England, and he is just finishing up a program where he and I will be collaborating and doing workshops for men and boys. And so I want him to be the one is on the ground in Dominica, in Nevis and St. Kitts, doing those things. He's a hip hop artist. He's also a banker. He works for Deutsche Bank, which is kind of an odd combination, but he's very creative. And I'm looking for people like that. I'm looking for people in Nevis and St. Kitts who can also support that and be able to sit with men and talk about, what it's like to be a man and a boy in this culture, in this society. What are the barriers to you thriving? What are the barriers to you carrying out responsibilities as a father, as a partner, as a husband? These are the things that we need to talk about. We have, in my view, a lot of toxic male energy in our parts. And a lot of that stems from how we raise our children, and particularly our boys. We either, in my view, we either over coddle them so that they actually don't even know how to take care of themselves. Like I was telling you, my grandson was saying to my brother the other day, Uncle Stafford, you need to know how to cook. My brother does not even know how to boil water. And he's, almost 70 years old. So, we're supporting him, as he has some health crises right now. But that was on his raising. It wasn't just on him. And the other extreme is that we don't allow men and boys, and particularly boys in the early raising, to express their emotions. I hear so many stories from men about, they scrape their knee, their mothers, they get a slap and say, boys don't cry, be strong man. No, that's not how we do it. That's not helping us. And how can we expect them to then be empathetic and supportive to us as partners and as women when we haven't even given them the opportunity to express who they are? We know that we'll be successful. We have no choice but to be successful.
Yes, we'll be successful.
We're
I
only
love your positivity.
It's a given. I'm here like, the four powerful women in my life. I can't let them down. I mean, it's just going to be, we're working on their behalf. And I know that their energy and the spirits from the ancestors are just guiding me every day, every step of the way. So.